Hello, everybody. Happy Friday to you. It is Friday, September 15th. I am Al Melchior. I'm here with Enos Saris for our weekend preview show here on Rates and Barrels. And this is the second to last one of these because, of course, this is going to be the second to last fab period in most leagues. We will be here on the final Friday of the season, just in case you are thinking that far ahead. But anyway, so things are there. It's getting down. It's getting down to the end here. And so we've got some hitters and pitchers to consider for that stretch run, some big news, a few closer situations to discuss, the usual thing that we do here on the Friday show. So let's get started with it and start with, I think what would qualify as the biggest news item the last day or two. Heston Kjerstad up with the Orioles. He did not start for that series opener against Tampa Bay on Thursday. But, what are your expectations in terms of playing time and in terms of performance?
Well, there's a very interesting discussion yesterday between Tom Trudeau and Eric Cross about Tom Trudeau has a service called Scout the Stat Line that is basically like an MLE, a major league equivalency machine. It looks at stats in the minors, weighs the ones that translate to the majors best, and tries to give you an idea of what the best prospects are based on stats. It's called Scouting the Stat Line. It's a pretty cool idea. Every projection system has something like it. His purports to be the best. It does come up with some interesting answers, and one of the interesting answers was that before the season he had Edouard Julien, I don't know the exact number, but like top 10 or top 20, where most other prospect rating systems had him nowhere close. Julian's doing well. I don't think that we can say right now we know exactly what Julian's true talent is, but it seems to have uncovered something there. And he was saying that Heston Kjerstad, given his age, 24, and production at AAA, somewhat mediocre. It's interesting to say that a 298, 371, 498 for Heston Kjerstad is mediocre, but it's only 16% better than league average. Estevan Florial was better than that in the same league at a similar age. So it is a little surprising to me. Then Eric Cross brought up some really interesting counter arguments, which is that you can't necessarily just use age at level for Heston Kjerstad, because Heston Kjerstad got myocarditis and missed like a year. And, there were all these sort of complications that were beyond not just sort of play on the field. It's, issues with his health. It's not really something that came from playing baseball. And so can you really count him as a 24-year-old? And this is something that is interesting to me, because I liked Jeff McNeil better than some prospect rating systems. I liked Evan Gattis better than some prospect rating systems. And both those guys had weird reasons for being old at level. And Jeff McNeil was trying to be a professional golfer. Evan Gattis was drinking too hard. So these were reasons that they were old at level. And to some extent, I think it played out that those players were better than you might expect given an age at level analysis. So I don't know that and then also the last part is we were at Arizona Fall League watching Heston Kjerstad, and he immediately impressed me as much as Julian. I was actually pretty impressed by Julian, but Kjerstad, I thought, had the ability to make contact, pull for power, and also spray for batting average. That is something that shows up in the numbers. He's not super pull happy, but he does have over 200 ISOs this year at AA and AAA. Kjerstad does. So I don't know. Like, I'm predisposed to liking this guy, but I also understand that 16% better than league average at AAA is not necessarily a forceful argument in his favor.
Well, we've got the weekend ahead of us, so we'll get to see, maybe get a better idea of what Kjerstad's role is going to be.
Playing time is going to be really important because it is a crowded team. And I looked at it's always about the corresponding move, and the corresponding move was sending Ryan McKenna down, not putting Ryan Mountcastle on the IL. So they're waiting, I think, because that was why Kjerstad came up for some reason, I believe. Mountcastle, medical imaging revealed no damage to his left shoulder. So could Kjerstad just be up for a couple of days, and then Mountcastle's back in the lineup Sunday, and you're like, I don't know what to do. So I'd be watching the news for Mountcastle. Be watching if Mountcastle's in the lineup, and playing time is always, at this point in the season, playing time. Actually, most of the season playing time is everything, but especially you just got to take who's playing.
Yeah, so that's definitely a job for all of us this weekend to look at that Orioles lineup and try to make sense of what's going on. But even with Mountcastle out on Thursday night, you saw Aaron Hicks there. So so I actually want to, before we move on from Kjerstad, talk about two would you rathers, I guess. And one is, would you rather have Aaron Hicks in a 15-teamer for next week if Kjerstad is not playing much?
Kjerstad and Aaron Hicks. I think so. I think the playing time has been there for Hicks, and I think that Hicks is a better defender, and he's a switch hitter. So these are a lot of things that kind of work in his favor. He's above average of the bat this year. Kjerstad's a little bit more of a question mark defensively, just where he fits in. Is he a first baseman or is he an outfielder? Whereas Hicks can play all three outfield positions. So I do believe that Hicks is a safer bet for sure.
Okay. And since you brought up Florial, he also came up this week and has started 4 straight games for the Yankees. So do you trust that playing time?
He's going to play, I think, because the Yankees are, they have this rare chance to give all their young guys a full month of playing time and see what they learn from it. Usually that's so win now there in New York that they don't have this chance. So I think Everson Pereira, Esteban Florial, Oswald Peraza, and Anthony Volpe are going to start every game from here on out. And I would guess that Austin Wells gets the primary share of catching from here on out. So, that's bad news for, Jake Bowers or maybe DJ LeMahieu. I don't think there'll be a primary concern in terms of getting them at bats.
All right. Well, fair enough. And
but what will he do is another question, because Florial, he did perform well at AAA this year, but at 25, a 130 WRC plus is not that great. It is better than Kjerstad, but he's also a year older. And the strikeouts didn't get better. So did we talk about this already, or maybe we talked about it on Monday with Chris Welsh?
Not with me that I recall. But
but he's still missing 15% of the time, swinging missing 15% of the time. And so the only play here is if you just want homers and stolen bases and don't care about batting average, and even then you have to make contact with the ball to hit a homer. So I mean it'll be touch and go, but I think he's an interesting pickup for people that just, hey, what if I could get in the next 2 weeks 3 stolen bases and 2 homers? Like, there's not a lot of players on the wire that could do that for you, and Florial could do that for you.
There definitely aren't. And there's a guy I think we're gonna get to later that is very widely available. Not a prospect by any means. He's been around, but I think maybe could be one of the bigger impact pickups this week. So it isn't necessarily the biggest names or the shiniest new player.
My big pickup last week was Jesus Sanchez, which I did preview in our pod as saying he's the big benefit from injuries in Miami. And as more and more people get injured, you're just like more and more likely that Jesus Sanchez is going to be in the lineup every day.
Yeah, no, that's I think a week later, still a good pickup if you can make it.
I think I already got a home around.
I do have a couple of other prospects to talk about. One of whom we actually did talk about last week, but Pete Crow-Armstrong, I don't believe we talked about because he was not up yet last Friday. He came up on Monday for the Cubs. Cubs have played 3 games since Armstrong's call up, and he has started 2 of those 3 games. So before we get into PCA, I've got Mike Tauchman in a few leagues, deeper leagues. But is this the end of the line for Tauchman, or I guess it doesn't hurt to watch what happens this weekend? But should we start thinking about moving on from him?
I think so. Tauchman had a nice beginning, but in terms of splits, it's been a little bit worse since. I guess I should check my priors. His September 84 WRC plus, August 102, July 120. It was that real hot May 149 WRC plus that's floating a lot of his stats, though. I mean, since then, I'm guesstimating that he has about a 225 batting average, 230 batting average since a 355 May. And also in terms of just raw things like playing time, you'll just see that, June he had 94 plate appearances. And so far in September, he has 40. It's drying up a little bit for him. I just think that, he wasn't necessarily a full-time player either. So, the fact that he's still on the roster, and Pete Crow-Armstrong, the managers even said things like, we're here to win games, not develop players right now. I think, how many more offers are they going to give Pete Crow-Armstrong until he's, the guy that comes in and runs for somebody and defensive replacement and just a guy who's helping them win? I mean, I think that's what they're prioritizing right now is wins. And so I wouldn't go too deep in with Pete Crow-Armstrong.
Yeah, that was sort of my what I was anticipating with him, was that he'd come up and be a defensive replacement and maybe an occasional starter. So the fact that he has started 2 of 3 was a little bit surprising to me. But yeah, we'll watch this weekend. I mean, some good power and speed potential there, but also a lot of swing and miss. So there's also some issues with floor even in the short term there for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll revisit somebody we talked about a week ago who had just come up at that point, and that's Jordan Lawler. And I think that he provides sort of a cautionary tale for the prospects that we've talked about so far, because it was pretty exciting to see Lawler coming up. The Diamondbacks made all sorts of statements about, they're in it to win it, and Lawler's going to be a big part of that. And already he's sitting because he has really, really scuffled in his first few games. So if you picked him up a week ago, do you drop him at this point? Is that too soon? What would you recommend?
I think so. I remain not very changed with regards to my opinion on Lawler's long-term upside. He's had little kind of foibles with call-ups before, and then like when he first got called up to Double-A, he struck out 29% of the time. When he repeated Double-A, he struck out 22% of the time. His ISO from in Lawler's first attempt at Double-A was 141, and the second was 211. So I kind of expect that he's an interesting guy for next year, but for this year, I would rather have a safer thing.
All righty. Well, let's move on to a pretty big news item in terms of real baseball. I'm not sure what the fantasy impact is here, but Max Scherzer is out for the regular season at a minimum, could very easily miss the postseason should the Rangers be in the postseason. So to the IL with a teres major strain. So obviously, for Scherzer, his fantasy season is done, and maybe his entire season is done at this point. But in terms of the Rangers rotation, is there any sort of impact there, especially with Nathan Eovaldi struggling again on Thursday against the Blue Jays? Velocity is still down. He's still not going deep and being all that effective.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wanted to look at Cody Bradford's numbers a little bit. because he seems to be the guy that's stepping in and finishing games when the top guys can't finish. Martin Perez is in the mix a little bit too. Right now, I think the rotation is basically Montgomery, Gray, Dunning, Haney, and Eovaldi. But Bradford is like sort of this glue guy, and he's probably the next guy if another person goes down. And given these names I just said to you, yes, that's totally possible that somebody else goes down. But I think that Bradford's over his shoes when it comes to his current ERA, so I'm not super interested in him. Eovaldi's fastball stuff plus has dropped to 88 over the last 30 days. He still has above average stuff plus because his splitter is still really good and his slider is decent. But you can only go so far with a splitter being your best pitch, especially if you're not going to throw it. Like Keaton Wynn is throwing it like 60% of the time. I just don't think Eovaldi's going to do that with the state of his health. I would say in 10 and in 10 teams he's dropped. In 12 teams I'd be looking at the schedule, and in 15s I'd be looking at the schedule. He could still be maybe valuable based on schedule, but if he's not going 5, then he's not necessarily going to get you wins. And since he's come back, he's gone 1 1/3, 2 1/3, and 3 1/3. I mean, maybe he's building his way back, or maybe they just need to win every game and they're just going to take whatever they can get out of him, which does not suggest he's going to get a lot of wins.
Yeah. So yeah, that number is slowly ratcheting up, but
I don't see. Is there anybody you like that's joining the rotation? Is it Dunning?
I mean, I think Haney gets solidified here.
Yeah,
but Haney and Dunning. But I agree that
I like Haney better than Dunning.
Oh, I do too. I do too, for sure. But I like the call on Bradford because even if Eovaldi continues to make starts, that he could be coming in the 4th inning and giving you 3-4 innings. Maybe he takes over as a starter or as a bulk reliever for somebody else.
Maybe he gets you 2 wins in the next couple of weeks by vulturing off of somebody.
Yeah, but it's definitely a tricky situation there. And I know on the 3-0 show, you and Britt talked about the Rangers, their precarious postseason position right now, and the Scherzer injury obviously does not help that at all. And the way that Eovaldi's been going, that's just adds to the precariousness of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a couple other teams and their roster situations. The Rays, they've swapped a couple of outfielders. Jose Siri with the right hand fracture, he goes on the IL. His regular season is done. Manny Margot comes back from an IL stint for loose bodies in his elbow. So Margot, I would think, would stand to get a pretty fair amount of playing time these last couple of weeks.
Playing Raley in center?
And they have been playing Raley in center. Jonathan Aranda picked up a little bit of playing time, but now with Margot in the mix, I would think he's going to play pretty regularly.
28-year-old. What did he play last year? First base and left field. Oh my God, I love the Rays. They're so bad. Bat poop, bat guano. I mean, Luke Raley was a great pickup for them, so I'm not calling that bat poop. And I guess he has some foot speed, so that's okay. It's going to be funny for me if Luke Raley's lined up in center and Margot's lined up in right. It's just I'm gonna be like, what's happening here? So,
I was not anticipating that, but it's the Rays, so I guess you don't know.
Raley, I mean, it could be a platoon in center because Raley does sit more often against lefties, and Margot is a righty. So
yeah,
it could be a straight platoon. I don't see like a real winner.
All right, fair enough. And the Rays being the Rays, I probably shouldn't be overconfident about Margot getting a whole bunch of playing time. So that's an extremely fair point. And then the Angels, of course, they've just been in disarray for weeks now, but good news, Zach Neto is back from a back injury. And then the Angels also brought up Jared Walsh and David Fletcher. I don't know if there's anything there. Walsh did not put up good numbers in AAA. I'm not sure what happened there. David Fletcher, of course, he is who he is.
I think I saw something from Sam Blum about this having something to do with trying to get under luxury tax.
Would make sense.
I guess if you are paying like a young kid But you have to pay David Fletcher anyway because it was a major league contract, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So you could save the $50,000 from paying a young kid because you're paying David Fletcher anyway. Because you're like the minimum salary is $600, right? And
yeah.
So are they really trying to save like $100,000 by playing Fletcher and Walsh over young kids?
Well, they were
Maybe.
last I read, they were pretty close to the threshold. So
I mean, that's why they did the whole waiver thing.
right.
So I mean, they're trying everything they can, and it's sad and not good baseball. But is there some way we can profit off this? I don't know. Where's Fletcher going to play? What's Walsh going to do? They sent Shanuel down. Is that what they did?
I don't think so. I'll double check it, but I think he is still on the roster, and see if I can find the corresponding move there. Jordan Adams got sent down.
Yeah.
So no, Shanuel is still there.
So Walsh, and I guess maybe it's preparation also for Ohtani just being shut down. I mean, this oblique thing is lingering.
Yeah, that
you didn't start Ohtani, did you?
I did not. I learned my lesson from the previous week. It's worked out this week, so yeah. So it's an interesting lineup with Shanuel hitting leadoff. Maybe you can think of somebody, but I cannot think of a comp. I cannot think of a player with a similar profile who is getting this kind of run, who just his whole thing is getting on base. There's absolutely no power there, at least not at this stage.
So it's so extreme. Do you know how extreme it is? The only comp I can think of is Luis Arias, and he has to hit the ball harder to become Luis Arias.
Like a lot harder. It's crazy.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
But I actually thought with the low strikeout rate, the high walk rate, hitting leadoff, I thought maybe this guy is actually doing some damage in points leagues. And so I did a sort a little bit earlier today, first baseman in a standard CBS points league. And he was like, for the last 28 days, he was like 30th among first basemen. So it's not really paying off in any way for fantasy. If he's not, he's not
first baseman. I thought you said 30th overall.
No, first baseman.
I'm looking at the lowest max EVs in baseball. Shelby Miller has a max EV. What is happening? Why is Shelby Miller? Is he taking a bat this year? Oh, I need to know the story on that one. I can't even. I'm not even gonna. Oh, Jordan Lawler, 86.3. Yikes. Anthony Bamboom, who has an awesome name, but Cole Tucker. I mean, none of these names are any good. He's closest to Jose Herrera, Tommy La Stella, Sean Bouchard. It's not a great place to be. He hasn't hit the ball as hard as David Fletcher.
There you go. Well, I kind of forgot that Tommy La Stella played this year.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Well,
there's not really a roadmap for this. He needs to hit the ball harder. I could think of some guys kind of like Kyle just murdered that guy's name. Kyle Kaihui.
Yeah. Well, there's a blast from the past I hadn't thought about in a long time.
And that dude had like plus I. And good contact skills, but he still had a 161 ISO. So I don't know that he's a great comp. And then you add in the fact that Shanuel's a first baseman, so there's like a lot of pressure on that position to perform offensively. Like the 105 WRC plus he's put up so far. This is why he didn't rate that highly for you. Is that's like average for first baseman.
Yeah.
So.
But
you're not going to steal bases, and he hasn't shown the Luis. I think it's another thing is like this. Let's say his comp is Luis Arias, right? And you say, well, couldn't he be Luis Arias? Yes, okay. There's one Luis Arias, and there are other people who we've comped to Luis Arias who haven't become Luis Arias. There's just one. He could just be a unicorn, And even somebody like Stephen Kwan, who has maybe the same skill set as Luis Arias, has hit the ball 4 miles, 5, 6 miles harder than Shanuel so far in his 2-year career, has a 100 ISO, and is also not one of the best players in fantasy baseball.
Yeah, I mean, when I do a sort, which I do often for people who read my columns, I cite exit velocity on flies and liners a lot because it's a really, really correlates strongly with power production. And Kwan's always at or near the very bottom of that leaderboard. And you're saying Shanuel's a few ticks below him, so that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that saves Kwan to some extent is that he hits ground balls. You know, and there was a great article on Fangraphs by, I think it was Ben Clemens, talking about the fact that Luis Arias is hitting 260 in the last month or two has to do with the fact that he walks such a thin tightrope that he's just barely hitting too many fly balls. Like his launch angle just gone up like 1 or 2 or 3 degrees, in the last month, and that's been enough to turn these like you have to think about what a tightrope a single is. You know what I mean? You're talking about hitting a ball like 150 feet and not 200 feet and not 100 feet, but 150 feet. It has to be that just has to be like over the thing, but not far enough that the guys can get it. And also defenders have started playing Luis Arias, and they'll do this to Shanuel if he has some success. The outfield has come in extremely far. So now the outfield is only playing 250 feet back, which is like, if you see it, you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then the infielders are playing at the very back end of the grass. So they've sandwiched him so that the infielders are playing 100 and the outfielders are playing at like 225, and they can run 30 feet. So they're making that band for Luis Arias like this big, It's like he is just a little crescent moon he can find.
Yeah.
And he doesn't run that well, and he doesn't hit for power. And, so they're machinating, they're defending their way past Luis Arias. And Shanuel hasn't even shown that sort of magic ability on that level. So
yeah,
I've seen some people putting Shanuel in the top 10 for their first year player drafts, and I will not.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Certainly for fantasy purposes, like I said, he's doing exactly what was advertised, and it's still not really registering in the formats where you figure he would have the most value. So
yeah.
Anyhow, enough Nolan Shanuel talk. Let's get on to some other hitters, maybe that will be more useful in fantasy. I found a bunch of outfielders, in researching this week's waiver column, who are kind of on the fringes of 12-team leagues. They might not be available, but they very well could be. They're like on CBS, they're in that kind of 50 to 60% roster rate, which tends to mean that you probably will find them on waivers. And for me, top among them was Tommy Pham. And I say top among them, not only because he's hit really well since going from the Mets to the Diamondbacks, but he plays every day. We're going to talk about a couple other players who are platoon players.
I mean, he's on your wire. You got to get him.
Yeah, there's no question. 10-team, you think? 12-team for sure.
I think every league. He's stealing bases even. He's like
9 stolen bases since the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the schedule here real quick. Where are the Diamondbacks? Don't the Diamondbacks go to the Rockies? They got the Cubs at home, and then next week the Giants at home. I thought they had a Rockies trip in them.
No, they do. They go.
But they go to Yankee Stadium. I'll take Pham in Yankee Stadium.
And then after that, they go to Guaranteed Rate Field. So, a couple of good venues.
Yeah, and, I think if he's out there, you got to pick him up, no matter what your league is.
Yeah. Now it is a 5-game week coming up, so we definitely should make that disclaimer. But so let's go to the platoon guys that I
found. You're gonna get 5 games out of platoon guys, yeah.
Right. Eddie Rosario, Mike Yastrzemski, they both should have 5 starts minimum this coming week because of the relative.
But also maybe maximum.
Lefty, but also max. So all right, so with a 5-game week for Pham, and let me just that is correct. I want to make sure I'm correct about that. So let's say Pham, Rosario, Yastrzemski all play 5 games. How do you order them?
Pham, Rosario, Yastrzemski.
See, I think I might go Rosario if games are equal, just because the
Because
team context
maybe he gets into another game, like maybe he gets a
and
pinch
that
hit.
and that.
He's it looks like good Rosario. He's a streaky for a guy that doesn't strike out a lot. He's super streaky.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But going pretty well for I think at least a month now, a little more than a month. So yeah,
Such a
but
great guy to have is like one of your worst everyday players.
yeah,
Like
right. Always
it's such a smart move by Anthopoulos. I mean, because he's such a wild. He's like a guy who swings at everything, but makes contact sometimes, and it's like that's perfect to have. Like to have as like your 7 or 8 hitter. You're like, yeah, and then we have a guy who might just swing at something you would never want him to swing at, and might hit it for a homer.
yeah,
How many times could you use that in a game? Totally.
it's working for him. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are some 12-team options. And then I also tossed Willie Castro in there. He is outfield eligible, third base eligible in CBS leagues. He's also second base and shortstop. So he's corner infield, middle infield, outfield. You can play him almost anywhere.
What's his use case? I mean, he's a switch hitter, and he's playing center field for them
I believe
with
so, or
Buxton
left
out.
maybe.
It's center and left and some second. On the 4th of September, he went CF 3BP. So he's got that going for him. I mean, they're finding a way to get him in most days, and he has 30 steals on the year. I think he's a decent pickup for steals. I don't know that it's like a 10 or 12 team situation because it's a little precarious for playing time. But 31 steals is hard to shake a stick at.
Absolutely. I think he has started 10 in a row, but I'm with you. I don't totally trust that because there are some moving parts on that Twins roster. But I think you're
Oh,
going
and
to be
Taylor is slated to be. This is why he's been playing so much. Michael Taylor is slated to be activated during the Twins' September 14th to 20th road trip.
Okay.
So
Good.
it could dry up pretty quick.
Very good information there. Okay. A couple other names, Evan Carter, who maybe I could have shoehorned in with the other prospects because he came up around the same time that Lawler did last week. But unlike Lawler, he's hitting pretty well and playing more, coincidentally. So
He's like if Shanuel had power and could play center field defense,
which would be nice.
and I guess struck out more. There's no real count there. No, I like Carter. I think that what he's doing so far is speaks really well of him. It's not a good max EV, but if you combine the AAA with what he's done, he's got a 106 max EV. I think he's just going to be one of these guys that performs on the upper end of his physical abilities. That's a little bit of just a read than like something you can see in the stats, but I know that he doesn't hit the ball super hard, but I trust that he will actually do double-digit homers at least, in a full season, and maybe even get to 20. And he's going to have a fantastic OBP. I think the strikeout rate will come back to normal, and he'll have an okay batting average. So I think he's a great player. I think he's a really good player. Great. We'll have to see. Might take some time.
All right. And I've got one more hitter to toss
and I
in.
think, I would throw him in with the outfielders we've been talking about. Like Pham is the easy pickup for me. Carter versus Rosario is interesting. If I needed some steals, I might take Carter over Rosario because I just don't know that Rosario is going to steal any more bases. But I put Carter ahead of Yastrzemski. So, if we're going to rank all our guys, Carter's in the mix.
Excellent. Okay. And I have one more, not an outfielder. So this is a very outfielder heavy discussion, but I did notice Dominic Smith is on a bit of a heater, and I feel like we've been waiting for that all year. Cause I don't know. I was certainly among those who thought, okay, change of sceneries with the Nationals, better park as well. Maybe this is when we see the Dominic Smith we'd been waiting for. Hadn't really materialized, but has been hot the last couple of weeks. And he's available just about everywhere. So I wouldn't put him in the same conversation in terms of, 10 and 12 teams. But I think for 15 teams, if it's like him versus, and I realize it's different positions, but, if it's him and Lawler on the wire, to me, it's no question that Smith gives
So
you the
take the
better
playing time.
gives you a better chance next week.
If you're making a decision for Sunday, you've got the Nationals got the White Sox at home and the Braves at home next week, and it looks like a 7-game week. That's not bad. I mean, the White Sox pitching is pretty bad. Nationals Park is power conducive. You know, you never know. The Braves may be send it in, you know, playing through the motions kind of at that point where they're bringing up all their rookie starters and stuff. So you may get good matchups all week. I don't think he's a good player necessarily.
It's a hot hand play for sure.
Yeah, and it's a playing time play, right? It's just like he's going to play every day. The matchups are okay, and he's been going well. But like, in terms of true talent, I'm not sure he's even a starter in this league. So
you
know,
and just to clarify
that's why
too,
it's not 12 or 10 or something.
Yeah. And just to clarify too, when I talk about or write about, for that matter, hot hand plays, I do want to see something backing up the results. I don't want to, be recommending somebody with a 500 BABIP over 2 weeks. The thing, Smith is one of the major league leaders in September in terms of barrels. So he is making a lot of hard contact. He's hitting at the right launch angle and he doesn't strike out a lot to begin with. And he's striking out even less lately. So he seems locked in.
That's interesting when you're using stats that are meant for small samples, but the samples are even too small for them, and they go in the face of those stats in the larger sample. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's not barreling the ball for the season, and he's got a really poor hard hit rate for the season. But if he plays to like just last year's barrel rate and hard hit rate, or 2021 when he played 493 plate appearances, he had a 40% hard hit rate, a 6.5 barrel rate, and a 120 ISO. I mean, that he could do that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, let's move on to the pitchers. And again, same as last week, a lot. So we'll probably move through these quickly, but a bunch of 2-start pitchers to consider that a lot of these players are available in 12-teamers. A few are available deeper. But let's, actually, before we go through this list, one point that I made in the column this week is that we really shouldn't count on anybody to make 2 starts in a week. And you just, I think, underscored that point by saying, like with the Braves, they could be calling up guys or doing bullpen games or whatever.
If Morton was on this list, and he's not, but if Morton was on this list, would you trust him to take 2 starts? I mean, even last week when people were asking me, is he going to make that Marlins start? And I didn't know what to tell him,
Yeah.
They've already been skipping days for Morton just to keep him fresh.
Yeah. So definitely something to keep in common. I think also a reason to really emphasize that first start in the 2-step, because you figure that's a pretty safe bet. And so we'll start with Ryan Pepiot, who starts at home against the Tigers. Now that second start, should he make it, would also be at home against the Giants. I like those matchups in general, but I would feel good about Pepiot with 1 start against Detroit.
Oh yeah, even just 1 start against Detroit, and he's, I think, clearly the best pitcher on this list. Other than, and I hate to, you like your rundown, but I'm a rundown killer. Brian Wu is on this list later, and I like him, but I have to think that there's a risk that he gets shut down for innings or moved into like a 2-inning, 1-inning, 3-inning, something kind of not so great for fantasy situation. I think the risk is maybe even higher than Pepiot, because I think they'll want to keep Pepiot on a regular rotation, keep him stretched out, because they have in LA they have such a problem with their starting rotation. I think Pepiot might be a playoff starter.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. 1 or 2 perhaps.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
I mean, I think it might go Miller, Kershaw, Pepiot. So
yeah.
And I had a column coming out today that the only reason I'm saying Miller first is because you might be able to rest your bullpen more if you do Kershaw before a rest day. And so I laid it all out. But so Pepiot is going to figure in big. Pepiot is my favorite pitcher in this list.
And he is mine too, which is mainly why I did put him at the top. And I like Kyle Harrison. I did put him second. And I think because the Giants really, they don't have a lot of viable starters. I think he might be the best bet on this list to make 2 starts, which is actually bad news because the
because of
weekend
the second
start would
one.
be at the Dodgers.
Yeah.
The first one's at home against Arizona, so I would certainly root for that to be his only start.
I think I like the next name on your list better. John Means at Houston is not great, but at Cleveland is okay. And I think it's a similar situation with Means that the Orioles are kind of have some issues with innings. I mean, in terms of Grayson Rodriguez's innings, and is Kyle Bradish getting tired, and what do they want to do to set up for the postseason? So I think Means is just the guy who comes in and pitches every 5 days. Maybe not a lot of innings, but 4 or 5 innings, yeah. And you're just hoping for 10 innings from him. Houston, Cleveland, and 1 win and like a 4 ERA.
Yeah, I think he could emerge from the week with 3 strikeouts, and not because he only got 1 against the Cardinals, but just Houston and Cleveland, those teams just don't strike out very much.
Yeah, it's true.
But
not a good strikeout play.
But the velocity was there in that.
But the Harrison at LA is that's one you were worried about.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I think that's a play for strikeouts. If you're worried about ratios, I think you have to skip Harrison. That would be my thinking, especially since there's some chance that he makes that second start. Let me group some pitchers together here. I think we could probably put these in 2, maybe 3 categories. Cutter Crawford at Texas, and then at home against the White Sox. Clark Schmidt, home starts against the Blue Jays and Diamondbacks. Edward Cabrera at home, Mets and Brewers. Let's stop there because I see them as being sort of equivalent.
I'm so tempted because I love stuff so much. Like, I'm so tempted to be like Edward Cabrera is a clear step ahead, but since he's come back, it's 4 innings, 4 2/3 with an opener. That does actually help. That helps him get a win a little bit more, because they're just more likely to give you a win, even though he does. If you start the game and throw 4, they're going to give the win to the reliever. But if you put a reliever in front of him and he goes 4, he gets the win. It's the dumbest thing. But
yeah, it is. But those are the rules.
True. Yeah, and his last start with the 6 walks, that makes me afraid, like a Kyle Harrison at Dodgers start. Mets though, and versus Milwaukee, both home. He could walk, like even in his last one at Milwaukee, he walked them 6 times. We gave up 2 runs. So I'm going to say Edward Cabrera is my favorite of the 3.
Okay. Yeah, I see them as all, being risk-reward type pitchers. A lot of upside with these starts.
Cutter Crawford at Texas is okay. There's something tough, and I feel bad for Chaim Bloom on this one, but Boston Red Sox road ERA is up there with a lot of good teams. And I think there's something tough about pitching at home in Boston that maybe the park factors don't all get. There's an example that I had, which is that the Red Sox righties pull the ball more than any other righties in baseball. And the Red Sox lefties push the ball more than any other lefties in baseball at the plate. And why would they do that? Because of the monster. And so if they can do that so readily, and I did talk to, who was I talking to about this? Matt Olson, maybe? I was talking to somebody about parks and how Spencer Steer, I think. And I think he made the point that, well, maybe they acquired the players to be like that. Maybe they acquired players, righties who pull and lefties who, because I think he was saying, like, do you think Justin Turner really just changed his whole approach because he was in Boston, or do they get Justin Turner because his approach is good for the monster? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
it was a good point.
That's interesting, chicken egg type question, because every year when you do a sort by Team BABIP, they're up there with the Rockies. Always.
And yet when you look at park factors, they don't register as one of the worst parks usually.
Yeah.
Let me look. I don't want to talk out of my butt, but I always think you see Cincinnati, Yankees, Let me look at the park factors from Statcast.
I would actually be surprised if they didn't rank really high for doubles. I think Fenway.
Oh yeah, no, I mean individual stuff does capture it. Oh, look at this. Overall park factor, Boston's number 2. Okay.
I'm gonna guess the park factor for Fenway for doubles is like 120 or something like that.
It's number 1. London Stadium is number 1, but that doesn't count. So okay, so good thing I checked my priors. I think it's just a really tough place to pitch. And if you think about players who underperformed their stuff plus or underperformed generally, the Red Sox and Reds, they're right there. Interestingly, Kauffman Stadium.
Good doubles triples park.
That's crazy. Its overall park factor by Baseball Savant is 4th in the big leagues. Would not have expected that. Tied with the Nationals and ahead of the Phillies. Orioles are 7th on this list, but I think that it's over 21 to 2023. So in fact, I think they're lower than that because the Great Wall was put up, and this is a 3-year park factor. So
right. Yeah, you always have to filter that.
Anyway, I think Cutter Crawford at home against the White Sox. At least it's not at home against Texas.
Right. It's decent.
I put Cutter Crawford second. Clark Schmidt, Toronto is pitching poorly, but it's home. And, if you want to talk about tough places to pitch, Yankee Stadium is on that list.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all right. I'm going to group the rest of these 2 groups of 3. Javier Assad. I think I can do this too because there's some good matchups with these pitchers. Javier Assad has great matchups at home against Pittsburgh and Colorado. Doesn't really get too much better than that.
He's a good pitcher.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those.
You've gotten into the great
objects
versus not good pitchers group. Is that what you got? Yeah.
Brady Singer finishes at Houston, which is horrible, but he starts at home against Cleveland. So I would root for him to get one start, and I would sort of like that. And then JP Sears and Paul Blackburn, and let me double check and make sure they both line up. I think they do, but they do.
I have those 2 guys circled. I have them as a cut above. I think that home they're good pitchers, and that's Seattle's. I know it has Julio Rodriguez, and so their offensive numbers, when you include Julio Rodriguez, are pretty good. But in the last month or so, but I would say that at home against Seattle, at home Detroit, plus the talent level of Sears and Blackburn, I'm taking that number 1 in this grouping for sure, and I'll take Assad over Singer.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense makes sense to me, especially because of the matchups.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if there's anybody in this last group that has anything to offer, but they're there.
What's tough about them is there's some good pitchers in this, and next year I want to own some of these pitchers. Brian Wu, Kyle Wright, Taj Bradley, Drew Rom. They're all lined up for 2. Wu, I don't think will make the 2. Wright, I don't know if he'll pitch 4 innings in each of those. Taj Bradley is killing me. I have him on my main event team, and he was going well, and then he had a 16 pitch at bat in the top of the 5th, and they took him out at 4 2/3 with the lead, and I was just like, just give him one more out. Drew Rom is interesting because he does not throw hard, and there's some okay movement in there, but I don't know, like. It's so weird to have a young guy come up and like he almost are you hurt? Which is like it's a weird thing to ask of a guy, but like I mean, it's a 23-year-old throwing 89.
Who's gotten strikeouts in the minors?
I know, but I guess Pitch Info says 90.6. So, but still, that's really low.
The point stands.
I don't trust him.
Yeah, well, overall, the results have not been very good. I think the last start, and let me check the game log to make sure I remember correctly, but last start at Baltimore, 5 1/3 scoreless with 7 strikeouts.
Also, his best velo of the season, 91.4. Still, I don't know about that.
All right, so yeah, they put them at the bottom for a reason. I guess it's a Hail Mary move in deep leagues.
If I had to pick, I'm just gonna on talent, I like Brian Wu of the group the most. But I think he's maybe the riskiest to make his starts.
Yeah.
Because he's really, really blown past his innings total. So I'm going to take Taj Bradley of the group.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, especially with that Angels start. I like that.
And I love you have an asterisk here, Michael King.
Yep.
As maybe a pickup for the last week, but they are going to shut him down at some point. And they also have a very strict pitch limit on him. King went, I think, 4 2/3 his last one. Let me see. He went to like 86 pitches and they took him out. So I think he has a hard limit at 85 pitches. So if he's a little bit like Drew Rasmussen, can he get through 5 innings in 85 pitches? Then you might get a win. I love him on talent. Yeah. And if it's a keeper league and he's like 10 or 12 team league and you can just stash him, I would.
All right. Well, this week at home versus Toronto, I would feel pretty safe about at least him making that start.
Mm-hmm.
The matchup is not ideal and it's at home. Neither park is really great.
And Toronto has been hitting pretty poorly, so maybe I shouldn't be as scared of that lineup as maybe it's just sort of name value at this point.
All right. Well, I think somebody to at least consider a 1-start pitcher this week. And again, as Eno said, maybe not 2 starts, maybe not any starts in the final week. So we'll see how that goes.
6 innings over 3 appearances or 2 appearances.
All right. Well, let's finish up here. Closer corner. I think there's a few interesting things going on. The Cubs, of course, got a situation that's now, I guess, maybe in flux with Edward Alzolay. On the IL, is Julian Merriweather definitely the guy there, or do you not trust the situation?
He's my pick. I've loved him for a while. People heard me talking about Merriweather. I don't need to tell them anymore, but yeah, it's Merriweather for me. I think Fulmer got a save, but it was like a 1-out. Somebody else pooped the bed and he had to come in situation, if I remember correctly. So I'm taking Merriweather.
All right. Well, and then
let's taking Merriweather over again, jumping your
go for it, because I was going to go where you're going.
Well, just Trevor May is on here. I see Trevor May's name, and I will take Merriweather over May. But the other 2 pitchers you have listed here, I will take over Merriweather.
One of whom is Tanner Scott, who we talked about last week, and then Ryan Helsley, who we probably should have talked about last week, but I don't think we did. But
I think you just figure Ryan Helsley is the best closer of this group easily. The only problem is they will not pitch him in back-to-back games. So it's going to be hard for you to rack up saves like you have with Tanner Scott. Have you noticed this? I picked up Scott in one of my leagues and was like, yeah, he's going to be the closer. It's going to be fine. And then he has given us, in the last 2 weeks, like 5 saves.
I have noticed because I picked him up too. So yeah, and Helsley's gotten a few as well, in spite of the limitations.
I think I would rank them Helsley, Scott, Merriweather, just based on the fact that Merriweather may have some risk around him.
Okay, Helsley did pitch back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday, saves in both.
Did he?
But only 8 pitches on Tuesday.
So that's why they let him back out there. There was a sort of a hard rule at some point that he wasn't going to be using back-to-backs, but maybe they want to get his innings up.
Well, I'm going to toss out one more, and it's a repeat from last week, but more of a follow-up, that I talked about Robert Stevenson maybe as the secondary guy in Tampa. And my recollection was, I think you thought there was maybe more ways that could be split. And with, again, the Rays being the Rays, that's a valid
concern. You did get a save out of the last week.
They did get a save this week. So does that change anything?
I think what I was doing was just pointing out that Shawn Armstrong was going to get some holds. And it was SP eligible, and he's gotten 2 holds in last week. So that's all I was doing. I do think Stevenson is the second guy. And in some leagues, if you get 1 save in the last 2 weeks, it might be a big deal. So,
well, and I want to thank you for pointing at Armstrong, because I picked him up in a 24-team league last weekend.
Exactly,
in a league where they're
SP eligible.
Yeah, SPRP eligible in a league that's, a CBS points league, so it's SPRP slots, and there's no more waivers in that league. after last weekend. So I figured, okay, in an emergency, I could slot him in either place, and he's getting points. So
yeah, there you go.
if you could still get Armstrong, he
I
might
helped one person with that one. Well,
probably
including
more.
myself. I've gotten some holds from him in my league.
All right. Well, Sean Armstrong paying off. Excellent. Well, that's all we've got now for this particular episode.
Good luck to everybody. A lot of people in their head-to-head finals probably trying to stay out of that last week. People that don't do that last week for good reason, because things happen in that last week that are just weird. So good luck in your finals.
Yeah, good luck to everybody, regardless of roto, head-to-head, your finals, whatever it is you're playing for ninth place, whatever it is. Good luck the next week or 2 weeks, however you're playing it. And before we sign off here, just a reminder that you can now subscribe to The Athletic for just $1 a month for your first year. Get all of Eno's content, the one more waiver wire column that I've got to write this year. We're counting it down. All the Athletic content, of course, is a part of that. So just go to theathletic.com/rates and barrels all spelled out, and go check out that deal. So just make sure also, if you're not doing so already, follow Eno on Twitter/X at EnoSaris. I am there at Al Melchior BB. And so that's a wrap for this Friday show. So we will be back on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks for listening.